You're listening to the Sports Fix.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Quick Lane at Valley Ford Truck, home of the low price tire guarantee. QuickLane.com/Valley Ford Truck.
Sports Fix listeners, don't wait all day or all week to get in on the fun. The party doesn't stop when we go off the air all week long. The Sports Fix social media sites are your one-stop shop for all things Cleveland sports. Jump over to Facebook.com/The Sports Fix, Facebook.com/The Sports Fix, and become a fan today because we love fans and they create some of the best sports talk in town, Daddy. You'll enjoy talking to your fellow Cleveland sports fans on the Sports Fix fan page. And if Twitter's your thing, well, you know how we do it. Tweet with us at The Sports Fix CLE. It's that simple.
Twitter.com/The Sports Fix CLE, baby.
Chat live with the crew during all your favorite Cleveland sports events, tickets and contests and trivia and so much more. Get with us today, The Sports Fix on social media, Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Tweet with us at The Sports Fix CLE. Join The Sports Fix on Facebook and Twitter today.
I'm Tyler Zeller from the Cleveland Cavaliers, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
No, you're not. You're no longer Tyler Zeller from the Cleveland Cavaliers. You're Tyler Zeller. Hell, I lost track. I think you're Tyler Zeller of the Boston Celtics now, but either way it goes, you're going to have to take care of that. Cavaliers, who do you think you are shuffling around the roster, monkeying with my liners like that? Welcome into the Sports Fix, each and everybody listening live on the sportsfix.net, on TuneIn and Spreaker and Mixler and their respective mobile applications, and on digital delayed 24/7. On iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, all the podcast platforms, and all the other places that you are disseminated the show and the materials each and every day. Thank you guys so much for being with us. I'm feeling good. A Tuesday here edition of the Sports Fix. J-Rocc, Jerry Myers with you, and my man Jeff Gorman from Indians101.com back. He's been gone for a couple of weeks here. He's going to be with us. Matter of fact, just a few moments from now, my man's going to join us, and we will talk to him about the latest with the Indians as we sit at the All Star break here. Charles Morgan in the chat room already putting the prediction down. The Cleveland Indians will have the All-Star Game MVP with Dr. Smooth tonight. I'm kind of feeling it too, man. I don't know. We'll have to see. It's too hard to predict something like that. All-Star Game tonight, home run derby last night. Is that your thing? Or do you even get into those anymore, All-Star Games and all that? We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Home run derby last night, a little rain delayed, but hey, they got her in. How about, man, I know Cespedes won, but man, Giancarlo Stanton is just an inhuman human being, man. I'll tell you what, man, but Cespedes gets the back-to-back there. First time since Ken Griffey Jr., I believe it was 97 and 98, but it was definitely Ken Griffey Jr. that won the last time somebody took back-to-back home run derbies. No, it was 98 and 99. I just looked there. Yeah, that was the last time that somebody did that. Repeat winner of the All-Star Skills Competition there. Jeff Gorman from Indians101.com. Dr. Football Bill Chachkes in the house. We'll talk to him about the DEA investigation quietly going on into some of the practices of the physicians over the years in the NFL. We'll talk to Dr. Football about that. Big Jimmy, pilot flying Jimmy Haslam, $92 million lighter, but also with the specter of investigation over his head as it appears anyway, the final big dominoes may have fallen with the pilot flying J investigation and the federal government. We'll talk about that with Dr. Football, all of that and your takes, because that is truly the lifeblood and the heartbeat of this show. So do it now. As a matter of fact, we've got limited windows here with Jeff coming on and then Dr. Football. It'll probably be a while. You've got the opening segment here, and then we'll reopen the phone lines at the end of the show. So if you want to get on now. Pick up the phone and give me a call. 216-539-7535 is the number to call. 216-539-7535. 7535, or if you can't get to the phones, hey, hit us up on Facebook and Twitter and email us, facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at The Sports Fix, CLE, all one word. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. Stay in touch with the show 24. And I love that too, guys. By the way, I don't have any clue the names here, but I can see the cities and the countries. Hello. Good day, mate, to whoever is listening to the show right now in Adelaide, Australia. Holler to you from the Sports Fix here. But I love it, man. I love hearing from you guys as you reach out from all the different places, and I see the little dots on the map. It's fantastic. You know what? Speaking of, not only is that fantastic, here's something just real cool before we dive into the show for you guys that, especially some of you longtime listeners out there. But, man, just passed a milestone here this morning on the Spreaker site. I list all the sites when the show starts every day. I list all of, thank you for listening on this, that, and the other thing, and all of that. Well, man, some milestone numbers passed. The Spreaker, which is one of the places that people go to, some of you listening to the show live on there right now, just passed 20,000 listeners since we've been on that site, which we haven't even been. I think we've only been curated with Spreaker since September, so less than a year. 10 months, 11 months, somewhere in that area, but just past the 20,000th listener there on that one. 13, 14, closing in on 15,000 on SoundCloud, but I don't believe that we're actually there yet last time I checked. But again, a milestone number there. 10,000 just passed on iHeartRadio. Just amazing. Just those, the podcast. This has nothing to do with live numbers or anything. Some pretty cool milestones to pass there. So wanted to pass that along to you guys because it's you guys that do that. And from all over. I didn't even compile the list because I just actually saw these numbers earlier this morning, and I wasn't planning on talking about it, but I remember I used to update the number of cities and the number of countries, but I can just tell you that it is more than doubled since the last time I told you. The show has been listened to since we've been just in this daily version of the show, the new, kind of modified version since we went from WHK to here, in over 1,000 different cities. And I believe the last count I had on the countries was 37, 38. It is amazing. But that's you guys, man. That's not me. That's you guys, and that's Cleveland and Cleveland sports. I tell you guys that all the time. That speaks to not only the interest level, but it speaks to how many Clevelanders are all over the place. And that's kind of apropos to mention, seeing as how, with all the talk of LeBron coming back home and wanting to bring that money in. Did you guys see? We talked about it yesterday. Fitzgerald's economic impact when he laid it out there, but we were pretty close. Those plain dealer numbers we were talking about yesterday from 4 years ago, 2010, 48 million, slightly adjusted for inflation. Fitzgerald yesterday was laying out economic impact numbers on Northeast Ohio and Cleveland from LeBron coming back to play for the Cavaliers. $50-ish million a year in additional revenue. And then on top of that, $150-ish million for each extended playoff run that comes from that. Money brought into the region and generated there. That's no pocket change, man, especially look at Cleveland. Drive down the street. We all know how many potholes. They're trying to figure out how to rob Peter to pay Paul. That is a big contribution there into the thing. And I've got to tell you, from a economic and financial standpoint alone, that's one of the things that makes it hardest when I'm making the arguments in my head about, the whole thing. Because no reason for me to continue to go into that, but that's one of the things that makes it really hard for me to argue, because at the end of the day, hurt feelings and anger and basketball and all of that, yeah, that's whatever. That's not saying that that's insignificant, but actual dollars and cents, you're talking $50 million a year, $150 million a year. You've got to figure that most years there's going to be what would be termed an extended playoff run. It doesn't mean championship, just long-term playoff run with a couple of series of games going down there. Man, that's no joke. That means on those playoff years, you're talking in between $150 and $200 million a year brought in. Nuts amount of money. Nuts that we're talking about that could be generated. But hey, if nothing else, at least it's being generated back here in Northeast Ohio. That's for sure too. You know what? not going to go deep into this here. I might talk more about this tomorrow, but now that everybody, national written media, has kind of gotten the coming home narrative out, they're looking for the next round of LeBron James stories, and a lot of them now focused on the financial end, and not just the financial impact like we just talked about in Cleveland, but the flip side of, everybody, you listen to sports talk radio, people paranoid about the short-term contract, and we kind of explained that a little bit with LeBron and why he went with the length of contract he did. But I've read some really interesting business articles about just the way he is kind of the center pawn. And I don't know if pawn's the right word because they drive the boat, but he's kind of the big piece of the Players Association in this whole struggle. And what I find funny, and I'm just going to throw this out here, this is not to rain on anybody's parade, but I thought about an ancillary reason why LeBron came back to Cleveland besides all of the reasons that everybody's talked about. Think back to the last collective bargaining agreement. Who was kind of two of the main principals on opposite sides of the debate when it came to how they were going to limit these contracts and things? It was Dan Gilbert on the owner's side and LeBron James on the player's side. And, LeBron's talked a lot, and one of the articles I was reading kind of brought out some of the quotes he made where he pointed out the difference between basketball and baseball. And, I mean, he does have a great point here with the capped salaries, even for the very best players in the game. Think about it. Everybody that makes a max salary, it's the same number. It's the maximum salary allowable to every player. And I've always joked about how that kind of doesn't seem right, that certain players that are clearly not on the same level both get what is termed the maximum contract. But the point that LeBron had made at this time was about baseball. He said, now imagine if this was Major League Baseball, looking at how the top star players, their salaries go through the roof. And we see we're talking $500 million contracts for some of these guys when it's all said and done, And he made a great point that if basketball had baseball salary structure, how much money would I make? And from a pure economic standpoint, he's right. Think about it, man. If it was like if the NBA had the same structure as Major League Baseball, the Wild West, as far as the salaries that people could get, you got to think that he'd be the highest contract in his game. He'd be that A-Rod level that you're talking. He got to cross into the 300. I mean, team. The amount of money that his contract would be, I think you could buy a team of your own. But anyways, he had a good point. So it's interesting to see him with these short contracts really being a pawn to get the players' salaries driven up. But when I get back to my original point, I think a side reason, and I could be wrong about this, but I think there's some side reasons that he came back as well, business-wise, not just to patch the blemish of the way he left. None of that. Dan Gilbert and LeBron James are going to spend the next 2 years working basically side by side. I mean, obviously there's some separation. LeBron does a good job of separating management from himself as far as now he layers. He knows to have that buffer in between of an agent or whatever, but they're still going to be working together to build this team for the next 2 years. So I think that LeBron, maybe I'm wrong, but do you see where I'm going with this? Dan Gilbert, big fighter on the owner's side for things that restrict the amount of money that the players can make. LeBron James, the guy who's trying to change that and leading the charge from the player's side. Now, they were on opposite sides of this. Now, even though they're on the same side of the journey, won't that affect maybe? I mean, maybe not, but can't you see Dan Gilbert being a little less likely to draw lines in the sand with the Players Association for the next CBA that comes up if he knows that it may cost him LeBron James again, especially when you see that you're sold out in 8 hours and all the financial windfalls that we're talking about? I'm just telling you that LeBron's a very, 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 very smart and calculating businessman on top of everything else. he definitely wanted to come home. Look, it's not complete mercenary. He definitely wanted to come home, and he does. If he wins a championship here, it really does mean more because he didn't walk into a situation that made it easy for him to win. But that's not just why he came home. He came home to patch the public relations blemish, and I think that he came home to make the next CBA negotiations a little bit easier and a little bit better for the players by having that relationship now. Not 5 years ago. I knew Dan Gilbert. We used to work together. Now we don't like each other. Now this CBA, it's Dan Gilbert and I who work together, and I'm just saying he's a very smart businessman. And I think that is another reason why LeBron came back home. But regardless, there's a whole lot of money that a whole lot of people are splitting up everywhere across the board. Everybody reaps the windfalls. But just keep that in mind later, because I see it. I said those two were such, I don't want to say rivals, but they were the center points, the lightning points of each side's arguments. And I'm like, well, how can Dan Gilbert sit at the table? He can still draw the line in the sand. Players and owners are separate, but LeBron has so much power based on his star power. Nothing to do with being what level he is on the court that balances that out. And Dan Gilbert cannot go gung-ho after him like he could in the last CBA when he was still going after somebody that was on a different team that didn't affect his direct fortunes like it will affect him in the future. Keep that in mind 2 years from now when people bring that up and you go, man, that homie J-Rocc was talking about that a long time ago. Anyways, that's my thoughts on that. A lot of money being made by a lot of people. And like I said, I saw it myself with the ratings of the show. 3 highest shows we ever did, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday last week. And people are still listening to Friday's show. I come on this morning, a couple hundred more. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So, unreal. Anyway, speaking of that, before we get to the break, I know Jeff Gorman's coming in a minute. We're rolling. We've already blown through the first segment of the show here. All right, guys. I'm going to reopen the phone lines for you in a little bit. I'm going to get Jeff Gorman coming on here in just a minute. He's been gone for a month. He's back. The Indians are at the break. Home Run Derby was last night. All Star game is tonight. Dr. Smooth, we've already got a prediction. Dr. Smooth takes the MVP. That would be nice. What was it? 17 years ago, this All-Star game, Sandy Alomar Jr. did it. So, what's that law? Every 17 years? I don't know. I made that up. But let's just pretend that it's true and hope that it works out. And anyways, we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about the Derby and Cespedes and Giancarlo, inhuman Stanton. I'll tell you, man, that guy is just a freak of nature baseball player. Now I see you if you looked at those Deadspin articles that we talked about last week with some of the Astros trades, shocking that Florida was even considering any of those things that were talked about in there when it comes to him. But we'll talk about all of that. Indians at the break, looking ahead, looking back. Jeff Gorman, Indians101.com. Coming up on tap next. Don't go anywhere. We have just begun today's Sports Fix, baby.
The Sports Fix, the show that asks the question,
what you talking about, Lou? What you talking about, Lou? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Lou? What you talking about? What you talking about, Lou? What you talking about? What you talking about, Lou?
We'll be right back.
Before we go to the break, guys, I want to talk to you just a second about our friends at GV Art and Design. Baseball's here once again. Cleveland, of course, excited, and GV Artwork teaming up with the Indians, and they're both going to knock it out of the park this season. And listen to some of the new designs they've got for Cleveland baseball fans everywhere. They've dug out an old classic, and they're bringing the heat with the new Wild Thing, Give 'em the Heater Ricky design. GV Artwork is teaming up with Cleveland fan favorite Michael Brantley and created a custom Dr. Smooth t-shirt. Plus, don't forget, they've got the Cleveland That I Glove collection, new tribal and Cleveland That I Love designs for women, and so much more. You can get GV Artwork designs on the website, gvartwork.com. And don't forget to use the sales code FIX10. That's FIX10, and you'll save 10% on your purchase. Or you can check out their new store in Lakewood on Detroit Avenue. Check them out in the Indians team shops and so much more. Cleveland That we all love, GV Art and Design. It's not just a shirt, it's a statement.
Hello, Cleveland. This is WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley, and you are listening to the Sports Fix. Yeah!
The engines are cranking and purring, and that can only mean one thing. Bike nights are back at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. Rev up your hogs and head on down to Harry Buffalo North Olmsted every Monday night. Enjoy $3 drinks and beers, $5 pizzas, and crazy wing specials for all bikers, all on their open patio. Hot bikes, good friends, and great times are waiting for you. 4824 Great Northern Boulevard, right outside Great Northern Mall. Monday bike nights at Harry Buffalo, the proud sponsor of the Sports Fix. Sports Fix listeners, like us on Facebook today. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Have you gotten your copy of Cleveland's Finest yet? Highlighting the best moments, players, and media members in Cleveland sports history? Some of the top names in Cleveland sports fill the pages of this incredible book. Cleveland's Finest by Vince McKee is this year's must-have book for every Cleveland sports fan. Available now at Amazon.com. Get your copy today.
You're listening to the Sports Fix.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix. We are live here on the sportsfix.net and across all the platforms. Tune in, Spreaker and Mixler Live, iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, all the podcast formats as well. Man, I was all over the place in that opening segment. And a second pot of coffee here and got it kicking in, baby. It's Tuesday. We got to push through, man. We're halfway through the month. I'm putting the date in. It's the 15th. I know there's people out there that go, man, you love to remind us that time flies. I'm telling you, I say it all the time. What's the old saying? The good old days, they're happening right now. It's legit, man. I'm telling you, enjoy every minute because, boom, just like that, it's yesterday. Welcome back into the Sports Fix. It's not yesterday here. It's today. It's here and now. Rocking and rolling. J-Rocc back with you. Going to go to the phone lines, which means you cannot call now. You can call us later, but you can keep in the conversation. Facebook and Twitter, facebook.com/The Sports Fix. Tweet with us at The Sports Fix, CLE. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. I'm going to the phone lines. My man, he hasn't been here for a couple of weeks, almost a month. Jeff Gorman from Indians and Browns 101.com. We're going to talk some Tribe at the break. Jeff Gorman, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, J-Rocc. Nice to hear from you. It's been a while. I've been off teaching for a few weeks. I was wondering, is anything interesting happening in Cleveland sports while I was gone?
Man, I mean, it's that lull between, the draft and the training camp. Not a whole lot going on. The James fella came back to Cleveland.
Oh, yeah,
that thing, a lot of, money, big dollar signs. A few things have happened since you've been, you might want to read a newspaper or two. I'm just saying, you might want to catch up. A few things have happened.
I'll try to pick up a telegram and get caught up.
Get out there and catch yourself up. What's happening, my man? You feeling good? It's good to have you, man. We missed you for the last month here on the Sports Fix, Jeff.
I know, miss you too. I was dealing with a bunch of SAT type of questions and crazy math problems and stuff, and it's nice to be back in the real world of people playing games for a living.
The real world of people playing games for a living. Exactly, though, I mean, amazing. You heard talking about those numbers at the beginning of the show. People playing games for a living going to bring possibly up to $200 million a year into the Cleveland area. So those are very high dollar games, It's amazing.
Yeah, it's just amazing how, how just one guy can cause such an impact. And just overall, just for the Cavaliers, going from being very relevant to not that relevant in the grand scheme of things, and then just right back into it, as far as being, one of the top teams in the East and possible NBA title contenders just like that. I mean, I'm still hoping to see, a championship, with my dad someday, and I now that he's back, that's back on the table, at least as far as the Cavs are concerned, so it could happen.
Back on the table. Back on the table. Back when Dr. Naismith put that first peach basket up, did the world even have $200 million in it? Did that amount of money even exist? Let alone could he have imagined that we'd be using that sentence, just one player returning to one city to play basketball, and that much money could windfall into the area. I don't even know if they had printed that much money ever at the point in time when he was putting up that first peach basket.
Yeah, I'm sure Dr. Naismith would say, man, that could buy a lot of peaches.
A lot of peaches, man. A whole lot of peaches. Peaches for free. All right. Hey, Jeff, let's talk some Indians here. We're at the All-Star break. Well, you know what? Before we do that, let me pull out the book here, because I'm going to do this to everybody this week, including myself. Let's find Jeff Gorman here. Jeff Gorman at the beginning of the season. I don't have a number for Indians wins. I have you predicting the Indians to win the wild card, though. So you did have them a playoff team. I don't know why I don't have a number here next to it for the number of wins for the Indians. But first half of the season, from where you had them to where they are, talk to me a little bit about it.
Well, it's really strange. I thought that things, would be better for the Indians. I thought that, that this whole season would go pretty much like the second half of last season. It would build on that kind of momentum and, be pretty much a winning team throughout the season. Of course, that didn't happen. But when you think about it, it's really amazing that the Indians are even 500 at the All-Star break, considering everything that's happened, considering how two of their main hitters have just now reached the 200 mark, and how the ace starting pitcher has an ERA of something like 5.50. I mean, if you had told me that, I'd say, and not to mention the horrible defense that the team played through the first half of the season, I would say, wow, we're probably going to be about 10 or 12 games under 500. I guess it's, just not really our year this year. But despite all of that, they're still somewhat in the ballpark because they somehow managed to make it to 500. So there's really kind of a silver lining, and after all these problems, there's still a chance that something good might happen this season. It's really amazing.
I'll tell you, I'm looking at these numbers here. I had the Indians between 90 and 93 wins, which means sitting where we're at right now, the second half, which is really not the second half. It's more like, 70 games, 60, 69 games, something like that. But I think they would need to win, 43 to 46 of those to reach my area. So they definitely, and they're going to need to do that to make the playoffs in one way or the other anyway. As they sit here, I think last I checked, they went into the break obviously back in the division, but I think 4 games back in the 3 or 4 games back in the wild card standings there as well. You got to start watching that here in the second half. But you said the same thing Dan Wismar and I were talking about the other day when it comes to all those things that you listed and where they should be, where they are at the break. What you said, a couple of guys. I said it yesterday. I think at one point half the lineup was under 200. Literally, you look down, you saw the Mendoza line. You were happy when somebody was hitting 240. You said, "Man, that guy's plugging the line." I mean, it was Brantley and Chisenhall and everybody else, man, trying to stick above 200. For a while, it did look that way. But all of that said, I'm feeling good that they managed to get where they are, but bad overall because, just the defense alone, forget fixing anything else. Had those problems not been there, we could be sitting here talking about a team that's 7, 8, 10 games above 500 right now because they literally gave away 15 or so games with the terrible defense. Just those, I'm talking about no-brainer gave away the game, not even where they may have still won. And so that's a big difference between a very successful first half and making it back to 500. But still, overall, to get back to 500, good for where they've been, but it can't stay there. And I don't know that this isn't what this team is. Like we said, it's going to take a run to get to 90 wins. It's going to take 43 wins in the final stretch of games. And the one thing Dan and I looked at, I don't know if you've looked, I'm sure you have, Jeff, the schedule rolling through into the second half, how Central Division heavy it is. There's a lot of intra-division games, and then that month of September sets up very well for the Indians between having division games and having some weaker opponents as well. Looking around the rest of baseball, before you and I even get to looking forward or anything with the Indians, outside of Cleveland, what's one of the biggest surprises to you in the first half?
Well, I think the biggest surprise to me has got to be the Oakland A's, how well they've played, how they put everything together, and how they have one of the best records in baseball, and I didn't see that coming. And on the flip side with the Rangers being below the Houston Astros in that same division. When you're looking up at the Houston Astros, something has gone horribly wrong. And that's the way things are going for Texas. It's really amazing to see Oakland doing that well. And I really have not been a very big subscriber to the whole Moneyball theory. I mean, I read the book. I didn't see the movie. And I know that it's at or near the top usually. But the one thing that strikes me with them is series in the Moneyball era. And that's what you really have to eventually do. So, so far so good. There's got a lot of guys playing in the All Star game tonight. And I'm really not going to buy into that unless the A's take all these underpriced guys and actually win the whole thing. Then I'll say, okay, we'll give Moneyball some credit. But so I kind of think that they're a little bit more smoke and mirrors. I don't expect them to play this well all the way through. The Angels are actually nipping at their heels very closely, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Angels eventually overtake them out there. And then, Baltimore has played very well, not, following up on last year. But, the Yankees are actually right where we are. They're right at 500, and they always seem to play better in the second half. So they're going to have to kind of watch out and see if Toronto could hold up out there, too. So a lot of things are really flip-flops from the way they've usually been.
Oh, you had the line. If Ron Graham was live tweeting the show right now, when you're looking up at Houston in the standings, your season has gone horribly wrong. That is just the best way to put that. But I will say, I do disagree a little with the Yankees. I think the Yankees have peaked out. I think that they are going to collapse in the second half. I don't see how. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're going to find replacements. Some teams do and some teams don't. But that pitching, I don't know how. They've taken a couple of big blows there. You got your top guys out of that rotation, especially if that ends up being long-term with Tanaka. I think that they may be teetering on the beginning of a collapse in the second half. What do you think? I don't know. I think that that's one of the worst Yankees teams I've seen in quite some time. But, I mean, look at how the rotation has – we talk about – look at how it's affecting the Indians. Same thing there, with CeCe and Tanaka. And so, I don't know. I think the Yankees have peaked out as far as staying around 500, and they're going to collapse in the second half. That's just me looking at it.
Well, I certainly hope you're right, but the thing you got to remember about the Yankees is they could do arms in the next couple weeks before the trade deadline. They're obviously never shy about making those kind of trades. Now that they're still kind of close, even though they're a 500 team, I could definitely see them bringing in a lot more hands, whoever they can, to shore up that rotation. Because if they were 10 games below 500, then yeah, I'd say they're washed up. But they're close enough that they might shore up this team, and we might be looking at a different Yankees team than we're looking at right now.
Could be. You could be right. I don't know, man. That I got to tell you, though, here's what's funny, is you got the Yankees and the Indians both in a similar record area there. Look at the difference. Indians are signing value deals with David Murphy and putting together the offseason that they did, because that's the way that they have to do business. Smaller market. We understand that. No reason to beat a dead horse. Yankees spend nearly $470 some million in free agent money in the offseason. Amazing. They both sit in the same point at the break. It goes to show you that it's not always spending money, although I always do counter that by saying every team that spends money doesn't win, but nearly every team that wins a World Series spent money. So spending money doesn't guarantee anything, but not spending money usually guarantees that, like you brought up about Oakland, that you can go some of the way, that you can go a lot of the way, but you can't go all the way. And I'm not saying it can't, but we're talking exception to the rule, not the basic rule. But just amazing, $465 million, and they're sitting at 500 at the break, And same with the Red Sox. We brought that up yesterday. They got a $160 million payroll or whatever, and they're sitting at the bottom looking up at everybody.
It's amazing because when you do that, when you set your team up like that, you build around veterans who have put up numbers for a long time. You end up signing them to these lucrative contracts. And then, half the time, these guys will fall apart in the second half of that contract. And then you got some really bloated salaries who are not producing. Look at what happened to the Phillies. The Phillies were very, very good for a long time, and then they all kind of seemed to get old all at the same time. Remember, they had all that really vaunted rotation. They had Ryan Howard with the big popper there. And then, because when things are going well, you tend to keep those same guys. But sometimes they all physically fall apart, and then now you're left with nothing, and you're just shelling out a lot of money. So, that can work, but it's very easy for that bubble to pop when you are a high-priced team like that.
Now, what do you think? 9.5 back there, both Boston and Tampa. Now, they're in different situations. We'll talk about Tampa in a second because I've heard some interesting stuff with the Indians and David Price. But I got to believe Boston is going to be sellers here. They're already starting to go with some of the younger guys and starting to go with that. I can see them, and it's very rare that we talk about that. But do you agree? I could see the Boston Red Sox being sellers at the trade deadline here. 10 games back. I mean, I don't know. If I've got $150, $60 million payroll, I'm believing that we can overcome that, but I don't think they can. So I think they may become sellers. And that leads me to, I want to go back to the Indians here. Buying and selling, they're at that crucial point here where you're 500. They're a game behind Kansas City for second place. You're 7.5 out of first here with a truckload of Detroit games coming up. Matter of fact, you've got Detroit coming right out of things here. And then I brought up the wild card earlier. David Price. I definitely, what was it? Where was it that I read it? It was a national blog that I read yesterday that said that the Indians had jacked up their checking out of certain prospects and some different players in the Tampa organization, and that there's a lot of rumblings that discussions have picked up again with the Tribe and the Rays about David Price. And it even mentioned some notes about some of the names they've talked about. Lindor supposedly has been clearly told that he's off the table. I mean, it's been expressed that he's off the table, but that they are willing to talk, even possibly Tyler Naquin, some of the other upper prospects, anybody not named Lindor. I don't know, man. We've talked about it. I don't know if one guy is going to make a difference with this team in the second half, but that's one of the one guys you can get that has a chance to help more than others. Obviously, you agree?
Oh, I agree. In fact, I think that if the Indians have any chance to get David Price, they have to do it, because a pitcher like that is, so rare, and some of the you either have him or you want him. And if you can kind of get a hold of him again, as long as you don't give up Lindor, you can go ahead and give up anybody else. But, this team, they've got a chance to do something still, despite everything going wrong, because when you look at it, you've got Kluber, you've got, kind of a combination of Bauer and Tomlin. They've been doing okay, but they can kind of solidify the 3 and 4 spots. If you can bring in a number one pitcher who actually pitches like a number one pitcher, and who knows, maybe Masterson will somehow find himself and put himself back together. But we obviously cannot count on Justin Masterson right now. It's sad, but it's true. If you can make that deal to bring in a number one pitcher, and then you start with Price and Kluber on top of your rotation, like, hey, now we're talking. Now the hitters are starting to come back. As long as Swisher and Santana can keep trending upward, as long as everybody else doesn't fall apart, if you've got at least 2 really good solid starters, then you can make headway down the stretch, especially if you're matched up against your divisional teams, which we're doing. So I think that, if Price is on the table, you've got to roll the dice and go for him. And again, it's like you said, if you're in a situation like the Red Sox and you're that far underwater, then you know if it's time to be selling. But if you're as close as the Indians are, then I think you've really got to go for it. I would love to see that happen.
Absolutely. Price, he's 28 years old. You look at his year, he's looking a lot like, almost identical like to Corey Kluber as record. So when you look at the wins and losses, you kind of overlook the guy because you go year, but he's got a 3.2 ERA. His strikeout to walk ratio, 164 to 21. I mean, that's ridiculously sick. You know what I mean? And that's in 20 starts. That means he's basically averaging 8 strikeouts and 1 walk per. That's a season. It's a shame to see he's only 9-7 because of the team that he's got behind him there. You could very easily imagine him and Kluber at the top of that rotation, teams having to go back to back. And then if you did have aspirations looking into postseason play there, that's a back-to-back deal that teams would not want to have to deal with. But obviously, the question is what you give up to get it. Like I said, the deal that I read said that there was no Francisco Lindor. Indians said if that's the case, we don't even have this conversation. But they were willing to talk about anybody else, and Tyler Naquin was a name that I heard was directly attached into that stuff. So who knows? It's nothing that's brewing right this second. It's something that'll pick up interest as things go. Obviously, getting closer to the deadline. What are we 2 weeks away, just about, of the trade
little over 2
deadline.
weeks away.
Yeah, so that thing will pick up, and that's the other thing too. Part of me, and I said this maybe about a month ago, said once the Indians decide if they're buyers or sellers, and they decide they're going to be buyers, I think, some people say, well, you wait a little longer, you wait till you get closer to the deadline. I think you strike as quickly as possible, much like we saw Oakland do, because nothing good can happen of other teams getting involved in negotiations and having more bidders. Nothing good can come of a feeding frenzy, which is what happens. So, problem is that the other side is the clubs know that, so they're going to hold out too. They're going to want a big package, which is why the Indians backed out. They were dead in the middle of talks with the Cubs for a couple of those young arms, but they wanted too much, and the Indians backed out, and Oakland was willing to pay the package of a couple of very highly touted prospects, so that's a tricky dilemma there. And the thing that Mike Brandenburg keeps going to is, even if the Indians make it, even if you get David Price, he's a name that he specifically mentioned, is that enough to put you over the top? And I still say, even if you make a move like that, which would be phenomenal for the Indians to make, and you get a commitment with him there too, even beyond that, you got to get help. So I want to ask you this. Let's take trades off the table. Let's look at this team as it's constructed. Give me the 3 things that have to happen in your mind for the Indians to make the playoffs, and this to happen no matter who they trade for.
Well, the 3 things that have to happen are the 3 things that have been failing in the first half. And again, it's just amazing that we're even talking about the Indians possibly being in it, being a 500 team at this point, because they really should be sunk right now. Because Justin Masterson has an ERA of 5.50. He's got to get better. I mean, a lot better. He's got to pitch like the Justin Masterson of old. He's got to be either the ace or the number 2. That's one thing. Because look at the rest of the rotation. Salazar and McAllister both went to the minors with an ERA of 5.60, and Carrasco dropped out. So when we had this rotation at the beginning of the year, almost everybody failed. And so, Kluber's doing great. Bauer and Tomlin have shored things up nicely, but we need Masterson. So number 1 is you've got to have him. Second of all, Swisher and Santana need to keep hitting. And they've done very well the last few weeks to finally get up to hitting about 207 and 209, but they've got to keep going, because the way this team is structured financially, everybody has got to hit. You can't have 2 of your best hitters doing terribly, or you're not going to go anywhere. And the third thing is they have to keep improving on defense. This it's not the end of the season, but it's getting there, so you can't afford to give away one more game defensively. And when you see a play like Mike Aviles made with that double play from left field, that just sort of makes your heart soar a little bit to see someone make a really great play like that. I hope it becomes contagious, because if the Indians can get Masterson going, keep Swisher and Santana hitting, and play better defense, then I think those are the 3 things. I think that they've got a chance to do it again, make the playoffs again.
I'll tell you talked about that. We mentioned it yesterday, Aviles with that double play. At the end of this season, I think when they put together the highlight reel from the Tribe, and you watch it, and you sit back and you watch that 3 or 4 minute, here's 2014 in a highlight reel, and you watch some of the defensive plays that have come out of this season, because I think you guys think back to the first half. Think of the triple play. Think of that double play. Think of some of the really good glove work that you've seen. I think when you watch the highlight reel, then, and I'm talking about a couple of years from now, when the stats aren't fresh in your head, you'll be amazed. I can see us on the air a couple of years from now go, wow, do you remember they had 90-some errors that year? They had however many errors it ends up being at the end of the year. But when you watch it, because that's why I keep getting so mad and saying it's focus. It's not that these guys can't do it. If they couldn't do it, then they would just feel bad all the time every year. It was a focus issue. You know what I mean? Because when you see the flip side of that, you go, man, come on, you can do better. But I'm with you. Charles Morgan in the chat room said, win, win, and win. There's your 3 ways to take care of business. Well, that's the easy way to show. Exactly. Now, here's a flip to that, and this one's not 3, it's 1. You give me, in your opinion, the one thing that if this happens in the second half, it's the sign that the Indians are going down and not up, and that they will become sellers instead of buyers.
Well, I'm not sure if this would make them sellers instead of buyers, because they're kind of close right now. If this collapse or something terrible would have to happen in really just the next 2 weeks. But I think that obviously if Corey Kluber gets hurt, then we're done. I mean, done. There's really nobody else who has been consistently great in the starting rotation. The hitters have been up and down. Mostly they've been getting a little better. But if anything happens to Kluber, we are toast.
I'm right there. That's so funny you said that, except you gave half of my answer. The answer that I have written down is Corey Kluber and Michael Brantley. I'm like, you should walk these cats to the ballpark in one of those Pope mobiles with the bulletproof deal. Make sure that they get carted in. Don't let them walk if they don't have to. Carry them. Help these guys, because if you lose Kluber or Brantley, then yes, this season is going off the rails quickly. That was my sign too. If something happens to either one of those guys, back up the truck. Back it up. Start getting ready for spring training next year. And my three keys are easy. Defensively, I'm not going to really go there because I think we saw in the last 20, 30 games of the first half here, they got better. They focused better. Yeah. There were less errors. They would go 5-6 game stretches without errors. They really did seem to focus better. Much like the hitting seemed to come around as the weather warmed up a little bit and stuff like that. Hopefully that continues too. One of my big keys to making the playoffs is Jason Kipnis. He has to hit the second half for him has to be what the last month or so has been for him. You know, he's got to go. He's got to do what he did last year. He's got to come out there and be that dirtbag, and not just the offense, but stealing and running the bases and diving and just everything, that energy level. You know, I mean, they've got to. He's going to be a big contributor. That's a huge part right there. If he doesn't, then they can give up any hope of coming and making it out of this thing. You know, Masterson, I've got to go back to him. And Dan, yesterday we were talking, he thinks that you can compete without him, but I don't agree with that, man. I say if Justin Masterson does not pull it together and give you something, you're going to be very hard-pressed to compete for a playoff spot this season here, for the simple fact that unless you make a move. Now, I guess that changes my equation there. You bring in David Price, then that changes. But I'm looking at things as it's presently constructed. I don't think you get enough solid pitching unless you get him back together. And he doesn't have to be great. He just has to not be what he's been so far this season. So I think you out of him at some point here soon. We'll see. I think it's going to be really not crucial, but it's going to foretell his second half, what happens when he comes out of the break and comes off of this disabled list here, and how they go about putting him back together for the second half. Because, you know, if it works, great, because that's, as I said, key. If it doesn't, though, I don't know. I don't know how long you keep trotting him out there in the second half. And we keep saying second half. That's a misnomer. The final, what is it, 60? Let's see, 80. What have they played? 84? So you got, so a little less than half the season left there.
Yeah, I think they played 94.
94, excuse me. I was about to say, I knew my math was wrong there. 94. So you've got, 62, 68 games left. Less than 70 games left, like we were saying. And that's a stretch run right there. Hey, let me ask you. Dan asked me this yesterday real quick. I just thought about it. Is it you, just like us? Does it seem like the All Star break is coming later and later every year?
Yeah, I think so. Usually it's right just after the 4th of July, like July 7th or 8th. But yeah, I think they've definitely moved it to like right in the middle of the second week of July. I don't think it used to be this. It didn't used to be this late.
He asked me that yesterday, and I'm like, you know what? You're right. I'm like, you know, now that I think back, I remember it did not, and the date as much as it being closer to the actual half, like around the 85 game mark or something like that. Whereas now we're close to game 100 before, and actually for some teams they're even closer because the Tribes had some washouts. So some of these teams have even played more than the 94 that the Indians have. Some of them are closer to 96, 97, 98 games played. I mean, that's closer to 2/3 of the season, you know, which is a misnomer when you say the first half and the second half. But anyway, so let me give you a chance. Do you want to revise your predictions where you're at for the Indians here in the second half? How do you think? Do they still make the wild card? That's where you had them in spring training.
You know what? I believe in sticking with my predictions. It worked with the Seattle Seahawks winning the Super Bowl, which I said at the very beginning of the year. But as with the Indians, I think they're going to get better. I think they're going to get some better pitching. I think they're going to I think they're going to get to about 87 or 88 wins, and I think they're going to get into the wild card again. I'm going to stick with my gun.
So you do. All right, there you go. You think they chase that wild card down? You think any moves are coming? Do you see them sticking with what they've got, or do you see them making some moves at the deadline?
I see them making at least one move at a deadline. You know what would be funny is if they went out and got Bartolo Colon from the Mets, because the Mets are saying, hey, Bartolo's available if anybody wants him.
No, I'm not digging that. I'll take my chances with Masterson. We've done the Bartolo thing, man. I don't know.
It'd be fun.
What do you think? Are you with it? Would you?
I think
I think it's fun. That's a scary word there, man. What do you mean by fun? Fun like?
But his ERA is about 4. I mean, he's pitched pretty well. He's been very durable too for the Mets. He's been out there every 5 days, and he hasn't really done bad. I mean, he's not out there, stinking out, but he's actually doing pretty well. That's why it'll be fun. It wouldn't be fun if he was doing lousy, but he's pitched pretty well for the Mets. That's why it'll be fun to have his portly self back. Or he wouldn't have to try to hit anymore either.
I'm calling your bluff on this. Hold on a second. I'm pulling up Bartolo's stats this year. I've been kind of watching.
Check it out. I think he's like 8-8 with a 3.99 ERA. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I just read that.
Right. Let's see here. Let's see Jeff Gorman if he knows what he's talking about. No, I believe you do, because you probably pay closer attention than I do to Bartolo Colon. That we're just being sarcastic. That's to the Indians as far they are looking for pitching, and this is a pitcher that is most likely going to be available here. Let's see.
They can get him very cheaply.
Of course I would have to go to the longest loading site in the world here.
Ha.
I'm going to take your word for it, man. I'm going to take your word for it. Where do you say he's done? What's his ERA, about 4 this year? I don't know.
It's like 3.99.
It would be funny. I mean, he was here before. What's he under contract? He's got only a year left on his deal, right? It was like a 2-year deal that he signed with the Mets. I remember that, and he signed it last year. I think he's only making a couple of million. Yeah, his salary is what, $3 million or something like that. So it's a reasonable contract.
Very reasonable. Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I cannot believe that this is what he's turned into, man. When you Google search Bartolo Colon, all of those image photos come up, and of course I saw the one of him batting. We were talking about that the other day, that picture of him batting. But man, Bartolo Colon he's packed it on, man. Didn't he get suspended for being on the sauce? I mean, I don't know, man.
I think so.
I don't know, man.
He learned his lesson.
He learned his lesson. And anyways, Bartolo Colon back to the Indians. There you go. Who knows? So you think a smaller trade, if anything, likely more than David Price?
I'd love to get Price, but I wouldn't be surprised if they made a smaller deal. Not necessarily for Colon, but maybe something like that. Bring in, get rid of somebody, somebody from the minors. Bring in somebody who can be like a solid addition to the starting rotation. Just get another solid arm in there just to shore things up, I think they'll make a deal like that.
Asdrubal Cabrera, does he make it through the second half as an Indian?
I'm sorry, does who make it through?
Asdrubal.
Yeah, I think we're keeping Asdrubal. Mm-hmm.
You think
I think he's with us all the way this year. I don't see them moving Asdrubal.
See, that's funny, because I said the same thing. Nobody agrees with me on that. Everybody says, no, they're definitely going to trade him. I said, man, I just think that, assuming that he stays a little warm here like he's been getting, I think he brings in more than he gives you more than what you're going to bring in value in a trade. That's the reason that I think he stays. It's not because the Indians want to keep him. I don't mean that. They do want to keep him. What I mean is, yes, if they could get a valuable trade for him, I think they would make it at the snap of a finger. But I don't think they can get a good value in a trade, so I think you're better off keeping him. So I think he makes it through too, but nobody agrees with me. Everybody says you're nuts. Asdrubal will be gone in 2 weeks, and maybe that's true. I know Lindor is ready. He's, no matter what anybody tells you, he's ready to go. The Indians are very impressed with where he's at, but I think Asdrubal can help. I think I picked him in the preseason, remember, as being one of the keys. If the Indians were to make the playoffs, they had to get a typical Asdrubal Cabrera season, and they have not so far. So him in the second half is going to be big. If he warms up, as tempting as it is to trade him, I keep him. I take him and ride him out through the end of the season, and then whatever happens from there.
Right, and go ahead, hang on to Cabrera, because like his stats don't jump off the page that's going to make other teams throw a big package at you. Like you said, he's more valuable to us than he is to another team, and I think you're going to need him. And just what you said, then you go into the off season, and Lindor will be ready to go, and then maybe now you've got a piece that you can maybe get something for. But I think at this point, it's not like he's hitting 300. I don't think that teams are going to just kill the fat calf to get out of Haslam.
Yeah, plus the couple of teams that he is most valuable to, we won't be dealing with because there are competition when it comes to playoff spots and that. So the teams that he does, it just so happens that the teams that he has the most value to are not going to be good trade partners for the Indians. So that's my prediction. I'm glad to see that you're on the same page as me. Jeff Gorman from Indians101.com. Good to catch back up with you here today. We'll be back, Friday? Back together here. We'll talk a little bit about the latest with the Browns.
Definitely. It's great to be back with you, J-Rocc. I'm looking forward to talking to you on Friday. Thanks a lot, man.
Look at that. See, how did you guys know when that I'm coming home on the radio? It was for Jeff Gorman, not for that James fella. It was for Jeff Gorman. Welcome home, Jeff. Welcome home.
Great to be back.
All right. Have a good one, my man. We'll talk to you on Friday.
You too. Thanks.
All right. He's Jeff Gorman. You guys can tweet with Jeff at Indians_101. And you can check them out at Indians101.com. We're going to take a break, give you a news update. When we come back, don't go anywhere. Dr. Football Bill Chachkes in the house. We're going to talk about Jimmy Haslam, Pilot Flying J, the Drug Enforcement Administration, investigating NFL physicians and more. Dr. Football Bill Chachkes coming up next after the news here on the Sports Fix.
The Sports Fix, your choice for intelligent talk.
I'm expecting a very important delivery at the house, so could you please call me if it arrives? I'll give you my cell number. 401-555-1125.
440.
No, I was just repeating the 4. 1-4.
1-4.
Intelligent talk.
Okay, 1125.
1125. 155.
I'm not giving you quantities of the numbers. I'm giving you the numbers. 1125. Those are the last 4 numbers.
Oh, I see. 1125.
Yes. All right. Now read the number back to me.
Let me get my pen.
The Sports Fix will be right back.
Guys, want to take just a second as we head into this break and remind you about the official business printing source of the Sports Fix, our friends at Signs and Ship. Signs and Ship, I'm telling you, Chris and Pam, they've taken care of me since day one, and they can do the same for you. Whether you're a small business that's already been established and you're looking to grow to that next level and expand your business, or perhaps you've got an idea that you just know is going to be a great business and you need to figure out how to brand it and how to promote it and put it out there, Signs and Ship is the place for you. If you need a logo, they can create one for you. They have a fantastic graphic designer. Business cards, signs, banners, yard signs, mobile advertising, anything you can think of that you need to promote your business, they've got it at Signs and Ship. The best thing about them, too, is each of their locations, whether it's the home base here in Elyria, Ohio that I work with, or their spots in Virginia, Florida, and Pennsylvania, it's all local sourced. Very important to me because we all understand that small business is the lifeblood of the community. So check them out, signsandship.com, or call Chris and Pam today, 440-323-6060, the home office in Elyria, Ohio. Signs and Ship, quality printing at affordable prices.
Hi, this is Joe Tate, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
Whether it's an oil change or a new set of tires, Quick Lane at Valley Ford Truck has you covered for your automotive car care needs. They also offer a low price tire guarantee. Choose from 13 brands, and if you find the same tires at a lower price within 30 days, Quick Lane at Valley Ford will refund the difference. They're open late Monday through Thursday until 9 p.m. and open early Saturday so you can check it off your to-do list and get on with your day. They also have a newly remodeled service lounge and additional service bay just for Quick Lane. Oil Truck is located at 5715 Canal Road, right under the 480 Bridge in Valley View, just down the road from Independence. 5715 Canal Road, right under the 480 Bridge in Valley View, just down the road from Independence. Come see why life is better in the Quick Lane. QuickLane.com/Valley Ford Truck. That's QuickLane.com/Valley Ford Truck.
Business owners and professionals, do you want to take your business, your product, your team, your event to the next level? You want to advertise right here with the Sports Fix. Our listeners are among the most loyal listeners, terrestrial or internet. The Sports Fix universe is not only the radio show, but tens of thousands of fans on Facebook and Twitter. Email me, Jerry Myers, thesportsfix@AOL.com. That's thesportsfix@AOL.com. And let me help you swing for the fences and hit it out of the park right here on the Sports Fix.
Portions of the Sports Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
News break.
Good morning, I'm Bob Picozzi. He will become only the second shortstop to start an All-Star game after turning 40. Derek Jeter, who will retire after this, his 20th season, will lead off for the American League tonight in Minneapolis, 7 o'clock Eastern Time on ESPN Radio. It will be Jeter's 14th All-Star game. His first was in 1998 in Denver.
Memories I have was I was scared to death. I was sort of hesitant to speak to anyone. A lot of guys are in the clubhouse that I grew up watching and admiring and respecting, and now you're in the same locker room for them. So I don't even know if I said anything.
It will be the 9th time Jeter has started an All-Star game. New Orleans Saints tight end Jimmy Graham this morning has agreed to a new contract. ESPN's Adam Schefter deal for a tight end in NFL history guaranteed. 4 p.m. Eastern Time today is the deadline for franchise tag players to reach long-term deals with their teams. Washington is not expected to reach a deal before the deadline with linebacker Brian Arapko, according to multiple media reports. And sources tell ESPN's Mark Stein Houston and Dallas are now pursuing free agent guard Mike Miller.
Genoa salami and spicy pepperoni come together at Subway's this month's Super Stack $3 6-inch Select, the spicy Italian. Try it fresh toasted on Italian urban cheese bread with all of your favorite veggies. It's the $3 6-inch Select of July. Subway, eat fresh.
You're listening to the Sports Fix.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix, live, hour 2 in full effect. J-Rocc back with you as we roll on. Thanks to my man Jeff Gorman for joining us. An extended Indians conversation there. Wanted to catch up with him, man. Jeff hasn't been here in a month. You guys don't forget, check him out, Indians101.com. He's with us every Tuesday. I'm with you every day. Hopefully you're enjoying today's show. Let me know on Facebook, on Twitter. Email me, thesportsfix@AOL.com, facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with me at The Sports Fix CLE, all one word, at The Sports Fix CLE. Guys, as we get back to the phones, and I'll open them back up for you guys here in a little bit before we wrap things up for the day. But I'm going to the phones again every Tuesday, along with Jeff Gorman. My man, Dr. Football's in the house, and some interesting things going on in just the last 24 hours or so in the NFL. Of course, we touched on it yesterday with the Pilot Flying J investigation appearing to be over. A $92 million settlement by Jimmy Haslam, which will at least take the Browns out of this specter of that cloud that was over top of them. And I'll tell you, I'm going to go back to what I said yesterday, because I had some people, and I understand it. Trust me, I understand the discussion here as far as did another big rich guy just get away with some stuff? Did Jimmy Haslam just buy his way out of trouble? I'm just honestly going to say this, and this is not has anything to do with the fact that it's the Cleveland Browns. I read a lot. Now, I read the stuff because it was the Browns. I wouldn't have done it necessarily for somebody else's problems, but I did read a lot of the stuff that came out, a lot of the documents and the information and witnesses and all of that stuff, the actual stuff, not just the stories about the Pilot Flying J. And LG and I used to talk about this a lot, and he's big on the Jimmy Haslam bought his way out of trouble thing, but I used to always tell Larry, I'd say, Larry, I said, I know a little bit about how this investigation stuff goes. I said, when you read the testimony, I said, it's like a really shaky legal case against, a mafia boss or something like that. I said, there's hardly anything in here directly to Jimmy Haslam. I mean, basically the only thing that they had against Jimmy Haslam was some people that got caught doing some things wrong, then turned around and said that the boss knew that they were doing them, but yet none of the recordings, like even the recordings, nobody had and I'm not in any way arguing or debating this case. Nobody had Jimmy Haslam doing or saying anything. You just had other people saying Jimmy Haslam did or said stuff, and I get it. You could say he insulated himself and covered his tracks. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, they love the big fish, and I don't think the federal government went through all of this just to make money. I could be wrong. I mean, I'm sure they're going to find a use for that $92 million check, but I don't think the federal government went into this just for that and to arrest some underlings. And what did they get, 9 or 10 guys who ended up with guilty pleas that are going to do some jail time off of this. I'm just saying that you had a real straw house argument against Jimmy Haslam was incredibly flimsy to LG every week at the Harry Buffalo. I'd say, man, they're just negotiating how they're going to end this thing. It's going to be a big fine, and it's going to be the end of the day. I thought maybe there might be a slap on the wrist as far as a guilty plea, but not even that. And I don't think that the government just walked away. I think that there was not, whether Jimmy did something or not, that we don't know. But I don't think that the government just walked away and said, hey, just write us a check. I truly believe that there was nothing linking him directly. Because if there was, they'd have got him. They love the trophy fish. The federal government, there's nothing more that they would have loved than to have the head of Jimmy Haslam on the wall along with everybody else that they've taken down like that. They didn't have no problem going after Martha Stewart. So, anyways, going to the phone lines. Let's see what my man Dr. Football says about that. Bill Chachkes, Dr. Football, he's with us here live on the Sports Fix. Bill, how you doing?
I'm doing good, J-Rocc. How about yourself?
Fantastic. Always good to have you. Always good on a Tuesday, man. And let's jump in right where I was talking. What do you think about what I just said?
Well, it's really a good thing that this case is finally over and that we can get on to paying attention to the more important things, which is the NFL in general and the Cleveland Browns in particular. But I have to agree with you, there's a lot of money on the table. It's coming out of Haslam's pocket, and a lot of people are saying he's buying his way out of this with the federal government. And trust me, we all know the federal government does not need Jimmy Haslam's money, okay? But they'll take it.
Yeah, they will. You got that right. They'll take it in a heartbeat. It ended up with all of the different fines and stuff. I think this was $150 million total is what this ended up costing Pilot Flying J from beginning to end. And like I was saying, when you've got a dozen or so people doing some jail time who pled guilty to things and really, and again, I can say some of this because I read a lot of the documents that the feds had put out about the whole thing when they laid it all out. And I kept telling Larry, I kept telling some other friends of mine, I said, man, I just don't see anywhere in here except for people that are already in trouble who said, my boss knew about it and let me help you get him, but never, even after there were all those secret recordings and stuff, there was never Jimmy on tape saying, go get him, or here's what we do. There were some things, but regardless, he either did a great job of insulating himself or more. I think what you had here was maybe Jimmy wasn't necessarily disapproving of the environment of going and getting what you can, but I think it was more a case of people, being, I don't want to say, because you're ripping people off, so there's not really a good way to say it, but I don't want to say being ambitious, but looking to impress, or however you want to say it, and taking shortcuts. I just don't know at the end of the day how much of it goes to the top. I mean, I think about anything. I think about working at radio stations. I was at WHK. I can't tell you. Maybe 1% of what went on the programming day-to-day activities did the general manager know about. He couldn't have told you what program was on at what time certain days of the week because that wasn't his deal. He had people that did that. The program director did that. I mean, we used to joke. We go, hey, man, somebody should call Mark and ask him what show's on right now. I bet you he doesn't even know because we would joke that his deal is something different. So part of me says, man, I never bought all along that there was going to be this big deal, big draconian penalty that came down because I just didn't think they had the evidence. I don't know what he did, but I knew they didn't have the evidence.
Well, the other thing is before they even got to him, there was a cursory investigation of his brother, who's the co-owner with him. And,
yeah.
He obviously, there would have been a lot more notoriety and a lot more backlash if they would have got his brother, because his brother happens to be a sitting governor for the state of Tennessee.
Right. And that's what I mean. Politics play a part in that, too. But end of the day, like you said, I think they'll take the money, but they didn't get into – I think they got into it hoping to take it all down. They wanted to, like I said, put the trophy head up on the wall. Say, look, man, we got the Haslam boys. We got them, you know. And I don't think that they walked away with some underlings and a check unless they knew that there was really either a very long – and hard-fought court fight coming, and that was the best thing. I just think that they also knew that was the best thing for the feds, too. And it's definitely the best thing for the Browns, because that was the cloud hanging over. I was joking yesterday that he said, man, called the lawyers and said, look, man, there's this LeBron thing's going on. The Indians are doing all right. Look, get this thing taken care of this week, man. I gotta get back in the mix here, man. This LeBron guy is stealing my thunder.
Well, not only that, a week from tomorrow, the rookies report, to camp.
Yeah, it's time to get to work, man.
Camp opens, the veterans report. So you've got a bunch of things going on right now, and the Browns want folks to look forward and not look behind.
Absolutely, and that is one. And there's going to be enough stuff, too. And I think that was also, too, I think it played a lot into Jimmy may have even wrote a bigger check than he was hoping to get it over with as early as you could with the camp starting, because you're already going to have the media flood with Manziel and with all of that going on. That's one less series of questions that don't have to do with the play on the field. And hey, there's a downside to that too, Jimmy. Just so you know, the less focus on your off-field issues, the more focus that comes with the on-field stuff. So you trade one for the other. Just keep that in mind, that for every question that doesn't ask you about Pilot Flying J, that's two more that will ask you about the wins on the field. You can take that to the bank.
And the other thing, a lot of people have said on Twitter the past day, well, hey, who is Jimmy Haslam to be lecturing Johnny Manziel about his life when he has this thing hanging over him? And I suppose a good deal of that is true. But if Haslam really didn't know how much of this was really going on, like he claims, then maybe he does have a reason to lecture young John.
Yeah, and again, I feel like in no way was I litigating for Jimmy Haslam. He could have been as crooked as the day is long. I mean, he's got that. I don't want to offend anybody and say con man suave, but he does. I've talked to him face to face. I've said he's got that. He's a people person. That is for sure. He could run for office. There's a reason that it runs in the bloodlines there to get elected for stuff, because he can win some elections. I will give him that. So maybe he does have a very crooked streak, and maybe he was the key point in that. But I find it hard to believe that you could get a dozen people in the company willing to testify against him and the government still didn't go any further. That's shaky to me. You got that many different people willing. Yeah, that's when I think there's a reason that the government took that check, because I think they just said, no matter what, man, there's nothing else we can do with this guy.
Yeah, I think a lot of it came to be that, they didn't have enough people saying that he knew enough and how long he knew it for. Obviously, what he didn't know from the very beginning, number one. And number two, it's 3 of the 10 people in particular that orchestrated the scheme and probably didn't let the boss in on it. So, when he found out, he realized he couldn't stick him under a bridge, or in jail, without going to jail himself. So he let the government take care of it and crossed his fingers and hoped that he could get out of it financially, which luckily he did. I believe it's going to hit him for 38% of his total net wealth, but I have to check that for sure. I think that's a preliminary figure.
I mean, that sounds like it, and there's still more to come, because remember, or unless I'm wrong, isn't there that other group of truckers that did not take the money, the ones that did not agree to the settlement? There's going to still be a civil or some type of deal with them, right? Because there was a group that said, you know what, we don't want your money. We don't want your settlement. We're going to deal with this in the courts. So I think they still have that group to deal with.
Yeah, and not only that, we're talking about they have 650 trucking companies that contract with them for refueling over road, refueling over road truckers. So I think you're talking about a group of about 5 or 6 companies that don't want to agree to the settlement because part of that $92 million that the government is collecting is actually going to go to them in recovery funds. So the government's not going to get it all. We talk about how much money the Obama administration is collecting. I want to see how much more money they're collecting off not taking care of these illegals coming across the border, and how much they're going to have to spend on public health service when people start getting sick with diseases that we haven't seen in the United States in 50 years.
Yeah. And I see Bruce in the chat room about the agreement. It does not, per se, protect Jimmy Haslam from being indicted or anything else on this thing. But at the same time, part of the agreement is Pilot Flying J is going to cooperate and give them everything that they want. There's no... Pilot's attorney is also Jimmy Haslam's private attorney. There's no way that he gave them... There's no way he would have given them carte blanche to take advantage of it and use it to prosecute his client. There's just absolutely no way. Jimmy Haslam knows that he's in the clear here. And here's the other thing. And I had Bill send me a message and say, "Come on, man. Don't tell me that you don't believe he bought his way out." There's 10 people who pled guilty and are going to go to jail for their parts in this. I just find it hard to believe. Like you said, they'll take the money, but they don't need the money. I find it hard to believe that 10 underlings can go to the hokey for something that their boss was a part of, supposedly, and the boss doesn't get held responsible. I just think the federal government is such sticklers for getting those big fish like that there's no way that happens, man. No way. They don't walk away from a fight that they can win. They don't do it.
Yeah, I agree. They don't walk away if they know they have a slam dunk, and obviously that leads to the question of what's keeping them from having a slam dunk. And obviously they have nobody on tape actually saying Jimmy knew about it, Jimmy okayed it.
No, they have that, but they don't have Jimmy on tape. They've got people on tape saying Jimmy knows about it, but that's exactly what.
But they couldn't prove it. They couldn't prove it.
That's secondhand. That's like me and you talking about it. Hey, Dr. Football, Jimmy knew about it. That's about the same thing there. It doesn't mean that anything, you know what I mean? So, regardless, it's a good thing to have it past them, as the Browns said, get it behind them and move on. And I guess we'll see. Since Pilot's going to open the doors and they're giving full cooperation to this investigation, I guess we'll find out if charges come out later. But I'm going to take it to the bank that there will be no further charges or prosecution coming out after this. Hey, and you know what, Bruce? If that's the way you want to look at it, that could be a point too. Maybe he paid all of those people to take the fall for him, but I disagree, because those people were the ones that supposedly snaked him to the government. We're talking about the people that went state's evidence. I mean, I don't know. What did he pay them to go state's evidence against him to throw him off the scent? I don't know, man. I'm not playing Magnum PI with this one. At the end of the day, everybody got their money back, and Jimmy Haslam lost a third of his personal fortune, and it is what it is. The other legal thing, I want to shift off of that, and the other legal thing that I want to talk about while I've got you here, Bill, we've talked about these lawsuits, the concussion deal, and the other one with Jim McMahon about the prescription medication. I don't know if you got a chance yet to read the New York Times, the article that they put out this week about the DEA quietly investigating the NFL, and not just the NFL, but doctors and physicians and trainers of these teams, not just to check on some of the stories that are involved in these lawsuits as far as the abuse of prescription medication and the abuse by the doctors in the way they prescribed them. But according to this article with the New York Daily News, they're also looking to find out just exactly where these doctors got the massive amounts of drugs that they gave that were beyond the limits of what people would have on hand to give to their players. Talk to me a little bit about what you've seen with this, because it looks like at the end of the day, no matter what, it's going to, the evidence here will probably filter its way into that lawsuit.
Yeah, it looks that way, and we have some we have some athletes, former athletes, saying one thing, and some teams saying something else. So the deputy director of the DEA said, no, this doesn't sound right. How could these doctors be allowing these players to abuse these medications without the team trainer or the team owner knowing about it? So that's the first thing they're looking into. After that, they're going to look into whether or not medical records went from team to team with this. And this is really the big thing here, because there will definitely be an interstate drug case if these records actually went, if a prescription went across state lines with a player when a player was traded.
Yeah, there's a lot of arms and a lot of different ramifications, like you just mentioned there, crossing state lines. And, a lot of time, and this is where you get into arms of the argument, because I've made it before, and I know that no matter, you sue now because things are wrong with you, but I know for a fact that if left to tell you the truth and nothing but the truth, and there was nobody else around, 99.9% of these guys would tell you that they would do what they did all over again, for the money, for the fame, for the competitiveness, for just doing what they love, for any number of those reasons all put together. But, my argument with things is the doctors. That's always been my problem, because at the end of the day, the teams, now this might be cold-blooded, what I'm about to say, but to the teams, while you wish that they cared, they don't have to care. To them, everything's an investment, and they're trying to get the most out of their investment. And to the players, everything is to them. They're trying to get the most out of their investment, so they'll play hurt. But I think the middleman in all of that, the physicians, the trainers, and the people, especially when you talk about actual doctors who took the oath when they left medical school to always do what's in the best interest of the patient, and sometimes that is telling them you can't play, you can't do this, you can't, letting them know what they can't do. And so I think if this is truly going to be investigated, and they're going back decades, they're talking about going back to the 90s, the 80s, and beyond. I mean, some of the truly crazy days with some of these people and the stories that they've had. I think you may find, as you mentioned, some doctors who end up getting actual prosecutions off of this because of where they got these things from and how they did it. Because I think that's where you're going to find a lot of people that you can place some true culpability on. Teams will protect their own rear ends, and the players obviously took their own risks, but the doctors have the responsibility. And I think that could get very interesting, especially things are cleaner now, but we know that they have not always been. And I think a lot of skeletons could come out of closets there.
Yeah, no question. And, I had a conversation with John Maurer about this in 2008 when I was up at camp, and I'll tell you really how it happened. I had a little bit of a heat issue that summer, and they let me come inside and sit down and get a drink of water. And John, Mr. Maurer came and sat down with me and said, "You okay, son?" And I said, "Yeah, all right, I'm just overheated." So he had said, I want to tell you that was a really good article you wrote, X, Y, and Z, about the medical situation. He says, I want you to know that this team doesn't do that. And I said, oh, no, I know. It was just, on the NFL in general. I'd written an article about how some of these guys were just considered disposable by some of the owners and some of the coaches. And, I knew personally that the Giants weren't that kind of an organization. There were a lot of them that really aren't, and that do put the player's best interest ahead of the team's best interest, which is why, we know for a fact the Giants forced Lawrence Taylor out when they did, and the same thing with Phil Simms and a couple other guys that maybe could have gone another year or so as a backup or, as an emergency insurance policy, with the team contract, and they didn't do that because they didn't want these guys going into a game and getting permanently damaged and not be able to enjoy their life after the game. And, I think Phil Simms is very grateful for that because he wasn't always the biggest.
Bill, they say this is, right now, obviously a quiet investigation and they're poking around right now, nothing formal and official. Do you think it evolves into more than that? Do you think that this can become, because, I was telling somebody the other day, somebody on another radio station, I was doing a hit, and I said, hey, here's the thing you got to keep in mind with that is lawsuits and depositions and all of that. that's civil stuff. And yeah, there's perjury attached and things, but it's a little bit different than when you've got an actual law enforcement agency involved with real punitive ability to do things and affect your actual freedoms. And I think that, that's a little different angle to this than it just being depositions and investigations that are part of a civil lawsuit. This is some stuff that can have some real meat attached to it if they dig things up. But do you think it ever reaches that point?
I do. I don't see it happening this year. I definitely see it reaching that point at some time next year. They will. The one thing I could tell you about the DEA and about other federal agencies is they take their time doing their investigations. They don't want to miss anything, and they want to make sure they have what they need to go into court when it's time to go into court. They don't like to lose,
Oh yeah, absolutely. As we just talked about with Jimmy Haslam. So
right.
They know when they're beat and when they're not. But anyway, that's something that, and I haven't heard this talked about anywhere. When I saw it over the weekend, like I said, it was an article in the New York Daily News. They had the exclusive on this, and I said, man, I think this is gonna go under the radar for a while, and then boom, I could see it dropping and people going, oh man, because there's. As we know, anybody that doesn't want to lie to themselves, things are better now. But, man, there were times when there weren't, man. And I'd be amazed when they dig down into some of these stories. And I think at the end of the day, players, owners, those kind of things, I don't think there's a lot of things to worry about. But I do think that you'll find a group of doctors that took advantage of their ability to do it, whether they thought they were doing what was best for the team or not. I think you're going to find some people that will find some legal issues come out of this, because there was a lot of dirty doctors over the years that have clearly, for guys to be able to play an entire season on a broken leg, as one person said, as guys to go through all the different things that they did. There's 1,300 people here with testimony in different ones. You could pick any one of those you want. Clearly, there were some doctors that were not following their Hippocratic oath and their legal obligations.
Yeah, I agree with that. We'll talk about some of the senior retired players that are in the shape they're in now. For instance, Brent Boyd, the former Viking, who played for 9 years, and he was a Rhodes Scholar in college. And unfortunately, he has all types of traumatic brain issues right now because of constant banging your head on the stadium floor in Minnesota.
Right, because they had the turf there, of course, the Dome Stadium. Man, that's something. When you talk about the concussions, man. We always, you bring that up, man. That's a different angle of the concussions. People always look at it, and you don't even think that if you haven't ran on turf in one of those artificial floors, then you don't understand that is not the same as even the hard dirt of Cleveland Browns Stadium. That is hitting the floor. You know what I mean? That is hitting an artificial floor there. So that's even a different equation. I didn't even think about that. But go ahead, Bill. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's all right. I've walked on artificial surfaces, and I remember being on the new Giant Stadium, the new Meadowlands MetLife Stadium field in 2011 before I left and came out here. And, I've been on the floor of the Lumberjack Dome here at Northern Arizona University, which is also an artificial turf floor. And you can definitely tell the difference between walking on grass or dirt and walking on a cement foundation underneath an artificial rug. It's there, and you could easily get injured.
I have no idea why, but just talking about that, I got the image of North Dallas 40 in my head. I can still see Nick Nolte getting tackled on a basketball floor, and that movie. There was one that was ahead of its time there, man. North Dallas 40.
Well, if you really think about it, every arena team, those guys are doing the same thing.
Yeah, they are.
That's a basketball floor. That's a basketball floor underneath. That's a wood floor underneath a rug. And I give those guys a lot of credit at how fast that game is and how hard those guys hit. And like I said, I've covered the covered the New York Dragons when they were in existence back east, and we covered the Rattlers here in 2012. And I know how painful that is.
You got that right. My man, Dr. Football Bill Chachkes. You know what? Anything else in the... Oh, yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention, maybe this will go down the road here with Jordan Cameron, but Jimmy Graham gets his money, man. He gets his big contract, and he gets right at the last minute there, gets taken care of. Was it $40 million? And I'm seeing some of the numbers here. $13 million guaranteed this year, $8 million next year. He would have made $7 million under the franchise tag had he stayed under that. $12 million signing bonus. So cash today, he's walking home with $13 million. A pretty good day for Jimmy Graham, that's for sure. And overall, a good payday for him. And now a real base for, I think, Jordan Cameron to start looking at for negotiations, even though Jimmy Graham obviously on a higher level.
Yeah, I'd like to see the sound system in the new SUV he gets with that first check.
You know, I mean, that's the way to roll, man. And that you see that now. That's the thing in the NFL. Get as much of it up front as you can because there's no guarantee you get the rest of it. So he got the $12 million signing bonus. It's just $1 million base salary for next year. $13 million first year total salary. Cap number's still pretty good though. They put together a contract that works for the team too. And everything else that's guaranteed is next year. Of the 40-some million, it looks like just 21 million of it is guaranteed, and the remainder of it is not. So, and he'll get all of the guaranteed money in the first 2 years of the contract.
Right, and the other thing is if they decide next year that they want a little more money to play with in 2016, they could still backload some of that into future years and leave themselves a little extra cap room later on if they decide they need another marquee player here or there. It depends on what the position is. A lot of that depends on what we go through with this camp, and that's true for every NFL team right now. Even though the players and even some of the coaches are on vacation, the personnel staffs and the front offices are diligently working out the cap numbers. And what a life it is to be a capologist, to be an accountant, a contract negotiator for an NFL team.
There you go, man. If that's your thing, I guess. I don't know. There's a lot of jobs that I would say, what a job to have. But I don't know if capologist is it. I'm not a number guy, though. I'm not that guy. But I'm sure if you are, that's being the cap man. What do you do? I run the salary cap, daddy. All right, then. But you're right, though. Good work if you can get it.
Yeah.
Good work. So is being a tight end, clearly. Jimmy Graham making some hay down in New Orleans. Jordan Cameron is just sitting, texting his agent going, noted. That's it. That's all they need to say, They're forwarding the story to the Browns right now. Forward from Jordan Cameron.
I think that's really going to be the hallmark for tight end contracts the next couple of years, because the tight end is increasingly being used more and more in the passing game again and less in the running game. And you need to have two good ones that can play starters, and you need a third one. You need a pivot guy to get in there and throw your extra blocks and maybe take the place of a fullback, because a lot of teams are not even carrying fullbacks anymore. They're carrying 4 tight ends now. And, they play that... they stick that F-back in there, that wedge position to be an extra blocker if they're not running a pass route, which was originally the fullback's job.
And we talked about that earlier when they were negotiating some of this with the franchise tag. And we'll talk more about it when camp comes, because Jordan Cameron's contract situation definitely at the front of the minds of the Cleveland Browns, as that's one that they want to get taken care of. Jimmy Graham kind of sets the stage here and looked like Dr. Football said, maybe kind of the base point for tight ends here going forward in the NFL. $40 million, 21 of it guaranteed, and all of that coming to him in the first 2 years of the contract. Dr. Football Bill Chachkes, I'm J-Rocc. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Football. Looking forward to next Tuesday. We'll be right there on the cusp. Rookies are reporting. Veterans are getting packed. It's training camp time, baby.
That's right. Best time of the year. Best part of the year for football fans. Opening a training camp, and I remember going with my dad to Pace University in Westchester County, just north of New York, and we'd be sitting there, and my dad would have his football magazine with him and his little yellow pad. My father used to make notes on a yellow pad, and he would watch these guys, and he would have the names of all the undrafted rookies and the drafted guys on one side, and next to it he'd have his little notes, and he'd be crossing names out, and sure enough the guy would be cut the next day or 2 days later. So that's how I got my start. That's how I started learning this business.
That's where you got it from. I remember going, I want to say, you get those fuzzy mixed memories from as a kid. I remember going to camps with my dad, and I want to say Baldwin Wallace was where they were doing camp when I went with my dad. I remember it was a college, and I'm pretty sure that was it. It would have been mid-'80s. Was that Baldwin Wallace time? Browns fans, let me know. Regardless, I remember going to a couple. Totally different than it is now. It's cool. They get 5,000 plus people there every day. Browns training camp is a very fun experience for the fans, but it's not the same. When I grew up, first off, way less people went there. When I was growing up, there'd be a couple of hundred people in the stands watching. It wouldn't be as much, but it would be different. The players were there, but then again, they're just there talking to you after practice, and it was much more of an intimate environment. Although the Browns do a great job of giving some player accessibility to the fans and making it a good. Although last year, I will admit, Jimmy Haslam last year said, I spent a lot of money on this team, and I think I'm going to find some ways to make some of it back. Last year, we saw the introduction of the food trucks. We saw the introduction of the merchandise store. They opened up a whole merchandise store in that thing, man. And there were several new things like that added last year. And I'll tell you what, I don't know, man. I wouldn't be surprised if there might, in the future, and I'm not saying anybody in the Browns told me this, but it's been discussed, because I've been told that there's at least been discussions about limiting the free parts of access to Browns training. There will always be some free access to Browns training camp, but there may not always be all free access to Browns training camp. But yeah, just thinking about it from the days of the smaller colleges, and that's the other thing too. They're talking about taking it on the road and taking it out of Berea and going back to the days of hitting a college. I don't know, something about that. I know it's cool to have your facility and everybody goes and stays at a hotel and whatever, but there was something more intimate about going to a college and locking down the dorm room and being away from your friends and family and your routine, and I'm talking about as a player, to go get ready for the season together. And it feels like some teams like the Browns miss that.
Yeah, I think a lot of teams do. And here in Arizona, the Cardinals broke their contract with Northern Arizona University last year, and they built a facility, in the parking lot at University of Phoenix Stadium. And I believe they're not charging yet, but I do believe at some point they will charge for certain practices. For people who don't go to games, you'll get to go to a practice for like $5. I know that's the new thing in the league now. You do have some free access, but you're also going to have you're going to be charging for the better, closer up seats as well.
Absolutely, and I can definitely see that coming too. There will always be some form of free access, but it's just like everything else nowadays, how they have a free version and then a spoofed up paid version of something, like an ad-free version of a website or something like that. And I could see that evolution being kind of like the free and the paid versions of camp. But anyways, it's always a fun time. Cannot wait for training camp to come, and I can't wait to talk to you about it, Dr. Football. Another football season upon us, another Tuesday in the books. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bill.
My pleasure all the time, Jerry. And, I'll leave you guys with this. You see the way it's going in the concert promoter industry where, you get the regular tickets for $50. Yep. But you get that golden circle with the pre-show meet and greet with the band for $200 a seat. That's the way the NFL's going with training camp.
That's the way everything's going. The experience ticket is the new premium ticket in sports and entertainment. I'm telling you, it's every platform, every sport, from a concert to a sport, no matter what. That premium experience. Bill, Dr. Football Bill Chachkes, thank you.
The new thing now, Jerry, is bands are taking their fans on cruises. So
there you go.
Have a football cruise.
Dr. Football with us every Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining us, Bill. We'll catch up next week.
All right. You have a good one, man.
You too. You guys can tweet with Bill anytime at Ask Dr. Football. We're going to take a break. When we come back, got a couple of notes. Man, the World Cup, man. I'll tell you, all the soccer jokes you want to make, that many people watching that thing, clearly some interest there. We'll talk about that, set you up for the All Star game. Is the All Star game, I asked this at the beginning, I'll wrap it back around. Is it a big deal to you, or is it, you can do without it, have it, take it, leave it? All Star game tonight. Looking forward to it or not? Some World Cup ratings, some news of the day. We wrap things up. Your phone calls, last chance. Get on the phone and get them in. 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535. Wrapping up the Sports Fix when we get back.
Warning. Listening to the Sports Fix could cause serious injury, bodily harm, or even death.
Ah, broken blood vessel!
You've been warned. The Sports Fix.
Hey guys, before we go to the break, I want to talk to you a little bit again about our good friends at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. Of course, you know during Brown season, we're there each and every week. What a fun time it was last year. But not just that, so many more reasons for you to check out the Harry Buffalo today. The UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships, some of the hottest fights in the world today. Each and every one of their huge events. Harry Buffalo is one of the few places in Northeast Ohio you can go there and watch each and every UFC fight at the Harry Buffalo out the door. They are to the rafters. It is one of the craziest environments for some UFC fights. Wing Mondays, they've got great deals on wings and drinks, and every day of the week there's a different special, a different deal. And don't forget the Bison Burger, the unbelievable. It is the combination of a fantastic burger and eating healthy combined into one unbelievable sandwich. You have got to get a Bison Burger while you're there. So whatever you're looking for, whatever day of the week, Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sundays, there's something for you at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Check them out today. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
Hey, this is Antoine Jameson, and you listen to the Sports Fix.
Whether it's an oil change or a new set of tires, Quick Lane at Valley Ford Truck has you covered for your car care needs. They're your neighborhood quick service experts. They also offer a low price tire guarantee. Choose from 13 brands, and if you find the same tires at a lower price within 30 days, Quick Lane at Valley Ford will refund the difference. 5715 Canal Road, right under the 480 bridge in Valley View. Come see why life is better in the Quick Lane. QuickLane.com/Valley Ford Truck.
The Sports Fix is now available every day on the world's largest internet radio service, iHeartRadio. Download the free iHeartRadio app, subscribe to the show, and get your fix. No football? No problem at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. The excitement never stops. Every day of the week brings a different set of food and amazing drink specials.
And now,
fans, Harry Buffalo North Olmsted is the home for every UFC pay-per-view live on the big screens.
Let's get it all!
And let's not forget their mouth-watering trademark, the Bison Burger.
They sure are good.
Nobody does bison like Harry Buffalo. The perfect combination of healthy and delicious.
Hey there, going folk, y'all deserve a little treat.
What are you waiting for? Get to Harry Buffalo, just outside Great Northern Mall today. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
Hi, this is Dean Chenoweth, head coach of Cleveland's Lake Erie Monsters, and you're listening to the Sports...
Welcome back to the Sports Fix, live here on the Spreaker and Mixler and all the digital delay, 24/7 applications, iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, all of those platforms as well. I'm trying to figure out here what the beef is. What did Deion Waiters do on Twitter that got everybody all up in arms here today? Because my timeline was just flooded in the last hour that I've just flipped back and looked during the break here. Just wanted to see if there was anything going on and see a lot of Deion Waiters issues here. What did he do? Apparently he said something that didn't make people happy. I'm trying to pull up Deion's Twitter account here to see what he said that could have possibly gotten the city of Cleveland up in arms. But Looks like apparently has to do with him not having any plans on coming off the bench. Wow,
never mind how cruelly LeBron James dumped Cleveland 4 years ago when he took his talents to South Beach.
There we go. Anyways, apparently Dion Waiters doesn't have any plans on coming off the bench, and he wants to be a starter, and that's a big deal, I guess. So people are mad that Dion Waiters does not want to. Now I found it. There it is. Well, everybody's getting themselves up in arms over sources who told ESPN something, because, that's worth a whole pile of beans. Why don't you go get you a pile of magic beans and make yourself one of those beanstalks that goes up a cow that'll sell them to you on the side of the roads? That Dion Waiters is not interested in coming off the bench. I'm trying to see. I want to make sure. Oh, okay. Now I got it. Now I'm at the bottom of this. Sorry, guys. We're playing Columbo here on the air together. It's because some people tweeted at Dion Waiters, asked him about being mentioned in some trades, and said the person said, I thought they were crazy. And Dion said, me too. Not going anywhere. Hashtag not going anywhere. The next one was Chris Broussard, who said, not expecting Dion Waiters to be part of a Kevin Love trade. Dion tweeted out, duh, laugh out loud, because he doesn't want to be traded. And then a Cavs fan asked Dion Waiters here, this is just not that long ago. This was a few hours ago. I guess a Cavs fan this morning asked Dion, will you accept the role of coming off the bench? And he answered no. Well, God forbid a player said that he wants to be a starter. I mean, he didn't say oh, come on, man. Of course, that's a word play. Of course he means he won't accept it, because as far as he's concerned, he should be playing. Any athlete that'll look at you and say, yeah, I'm going to accept it, then I don't want him on my team, especially if I just made a move like the Cavaliers are attempting to make here and be relevant and jump into the top stratosphere of the NBA. This is what's got Cleveland up in arms. This is what's got everybody hot, and it turned into an article. Dion Waiters refuses role of coming off the bench. So within 3 days, the story will be Dion Waiters forces a trade. He wants to be traded because he can't stand Kyrie Irving, and that darn LeBron James came to town, and now he has to be traded. I love how one little line in a tweet is flipped around and turned into an entire news story, because then that news story is perpetuated over and over and over again, and the false initial one little thing turns into a sourced story that's been sourced over and over upon itself. Amazing. That's how you watch the anatomy of a rumor happen right there. So, sorry, Cavs fans, if you go on Twitter and you see everybody mad at Dion, now you know why. If you want to be mad at him for not wanting to come off the bench, go ahead. I say more power to him. Dion Waiters, go out there and play some. Make them put you on the bench. And if they do, we'll have the best sixth man in the NBA. I think he's effective there. Don't get me wrong. I think Dion's spot is on the bench. I'm just saying I don't want him to want to come off the bench. That I don't want. That to me, do you understand where I'm coming from? It's the mentality. I want the competitor. I want him with that chip on his shoulder. That's why Dion scores 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 points coming off the bench, because he's mad that he's coming off the bench and he wants to show that he can play some ball and contribute to the team. It's the psychology of it. Phil Jackson, he's not an X's and O's guy. That's what he used to do to get the most out of these guys, the role players, especially when he had LeBron or even Kobe, and he had to get certain guys. Everybody wants to be the guy. So he had to take 15 guys who want to be the guy and convince them all that they're the guy without them actually being the guy. And that was the magic of the psychology of what made him a great coach. It had nothing to do with him being some basketball genius. I mean, he has some basketball IQ, no doubt, but it's not just a guru of X's and O's. He's a guru of people, psychology, and that kind of thing. And so anyways, yeah, be mad that Dion Waiters doesn't want to come off the bench. That's just silly. I'm glad I looked into that, because now I'm a little bit fired up. Welcome back into the show. J-Rocc back with you. Mad at people that are mad at Dion Waiters. Tonight, back to it, the All Star game tonight. Is that thing a big deal to you? Because I just don't do it. Exhibition games in general, the Pro Bowl. It doesn't matter any of the sports, the All Star thing. I mean, I like watching our guys, that are in it. I like watching the big national stories. Like, obviously, you got Derek Jeter's final All-Star game, so there's that storyline to it. Michael Brantley, who it's been predicted here at the beginning of the show by Charles in the chat room, is going to be the MVP of the All-Star game tonight. But, I don't know, home run derby doesn't do it for me. It just really doesn't do it for me anymore. I don't know. Maybe you've seen so many of them. I don't know. But that's not my thing. The All-Star game, not my thing. Slam dunk was. The slam dunk and the three-point, I used to get into those, especially when I was younger, but it just not so much for me. I tried to watch the slam dunk contest this past year. There was a couple of things I liked, but for the most part, I was like, come on, man, this is not what it used to be. And the three-point contest is that one I kind of still get into. I do kind of still get into that. I get into the home run derby a little bit, but the actual games, the Pro Bowl, when's the last time I even watched a Pro Bowl? I mean, I've caught it flipping through the channels, watched a moment here and there of each game, but I don't even remember the last time I've watched a significant portion of the Pro Bowl. NBA All Star game, same thing. Watched bits and pieces of it. I used to watch it more. I used to like the NBA All Star game when I was a kid. See, when you're younger, you look at things a little differently. You're just happy to see all those players playing against each other at the same time in combinations that you don't normally see. To me, one of the coolest All-Star games, just memories that I have from a kid was the year Magic came back. I don't know if you guys remember that. Magic Johnson, he had just retired. He, made the announcement that he had the HIV and he retired. And then he got voted into the All-Star. I think he got voted in. I'm pretty sure that's how he got in, because he was still on the ballots, because he had started the season or it was nobody knew what was going to happen because it happened so quickly when he made the retirement announcement that he ended up being, I think it was voted into the All-Star game. And then remember, he had the one-on-ones where he was just owning the thing and the place was going nuts. And then he would go one-on-one with everybody, with Matt, with Michael. And I thought, man, that was cool. I remember that one. That's one of the ones that I do remember. But the basketball one, it drives me nuts now because it's the entire game. Nobody plays a lick of defense, and then they may jack up the intensity for the last couple of minutes or whatever, but nobody plays a lick of defense. Everybody scores 175 to 176 is the final score. So I never get that much into that one anymore. And like I said, Pro Bowl, nothing. Baseball, and that tying actual stuff into the results of an exhibition game does not do it justice for me either. Like, the home field in the World Series should not be determined by something that a Houston Astro does. I'm just being real. I'm not, no disrespect to Houston, but this year they're not in that discussion, or whoever it may be, Boston, because they're in last place. But a player on a last place team in an exhibition game on a Tuesday should not determine who gets the home field advantage in the World Series or whatever. You know what I mean? Because they try to attach jeopardy to these All-Stars. But it's fun for people that get into it. I never like to rain on anybody's party or whatever. So All-Star game tonight. Hopefully Michael Brantley goes out there and represents the Indians well. Kluber Lang should be out there too, by the way, but that's another story for another day. But Michael Brantley, Dr. Smooth, show them all why we call you Dr. Smooth here in Cleveland. And watch that on TV tonight if you guys are. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Speaking of watching things on TV, as we head into the home stretch wrapping things up here, did you see the ratings? We make jokes. Everybody makes their soccer jokes. And I know at the end of the World Cup, I think simultaneously I had about 700 tweets on my timeline that all said, okay, everybody's done talking about soccer for the next 4 years and vice versa. But check it out. Worldwide, 3 billion Facebook interactions directly involving the World Cup in a month, in the month of World Cup action. 3 billion Facebook interactions, 672 million tweets on Twitter involving the World Cup. 672 million tweets. That is disgusting. Here's the big one, though, because that's worldwide. This is here in the United States. 26.5 million people watched Germany win that game on Sunday. 26.5 million people. 17.3 million watched it on the ABC feed. Another 9.2 million watched it on the Spanish feed of Univision. And 750,000 more were watching it every minute that it was online. They averaged 750,000 online viewers every minute during the feeds of each network. So that's 1.5 million watching on the internet every minute as well. That's nuts. That is nuts. In Germany, 35 million people watched it. Highest thing ever watched in Germany, man. The previous high in the United States for any World Cup final that was watched here. It said, you know what? ESPN reported 4 years ago to now, 40% increase for all of the viewership on the ESPN networks, and Univision had a 35% increase as well. So a lot of increased interest in this year's World Cup. But we make all the jokes. We make all the jokes about everything, but that'll show you. 26.5 million people in the United States watched a final between two countries, neither one of them being the United States. So there was some interest there for sure. Most definitely. Big business for the World Cup and the advertisers of the World Cup as well. All right, guys, we're going to call it a day. Tonight, the All Star game. Go Dr. Smooth. We're going to come back and talk about it tomorrow. Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan will be here. I'm trying to catch up with Doug Plagans. It'll be tomorrow or Thursday, so I'll just have to surprise you with that one. Who knows what else we'll talk about tomorrow. All the news of the day, your calls, and so much more. Same bad time, same bad channel, live here on the Sports Fix. Have fun tonight. If the All-Star game is your thing, then do your thing and come back here tomorrow. We love you, Cleveland. We'll see you tomorrow. Go Dr. Smooth. Go Cleveland. We'll see you tomorrow. We love you, Cleveland.